About ready to do a wrap up and see where we are. I think we are. I guess we are. Game plan tonight basically is kind of loose, and I don't really think we want to go too long tonight. I understand that. I know that there's another agenda. It's like getting out to a fun place like Augsburg College. Checking out what Tuesday night is like there as opposed to Saturday night. Yeah? Someone asked me what you could do around here to have fun, and I mentioned if you could steal it. Oh. Gotcha. If you can steal a car, I wouldn't know where you do that, but if you could steal a car, you can go to Baltimore. And in Baltimore, you can have a whole range of activities from cruising Little Italy to hitting the block, which is sort of an old-fashioned strip joint where you can go watch 42-year-old men with beards and bald heads sitting at a bar letting the girls take off their clothes. You know, that would be one option for it. And it's not much different than Hennepin Street. Don't ask me how I know about Hennepin Street. People have told me about it, you know. I've heard that there's a street in Minneapolis called Hennepin Street where they do some kinds of the same naughty sort of things. Some people go there and drink milk. There are some sophisticated clubs in Baltimore. It's, if you can work something out, go. In town, you got Hobbit's Glen, and over at Wild Lake, there's a lounge in the Karras House of Beef.
That's supposed to be a hopping place.
And it's closed on Tuesday, right?
No, they have a good band.
Okay. The dining room is. Maybe that's why Hobbit's Glen is supposed to swing on Tuesday nights because Karras.
Say, when we were out at the motel, I saw the guy that invited us over. Remember Sunday? Saturday night, when we went out Saturday night, we got invited after the bar course to that guy's place.
Yeah.
We just saw him in Crosskeep. He said that place is just nothing on Tuesday.
Nothing on Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's it?
Hobbit's Glen.
Well, you alive enough. This is true.
I'll have to go out there and see if it's true.
He said what? He said that the Crosskeys is where
It's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bar is pretty small there, though. I was there last night, and it's kind of a munchy crowd. I wasn't too impressed.
Do they have a band going at Crosskeys?
Yeah.
starting at 8:30 or something.
And it runs till 1:30.
You can do a little dancing. I was impressed there when I took my wife there to dinner. I felt very much at home because the music was 1945.
Really?
Give time.
Oh, I'd like that.
Oh, you'd like it?
Oh,
Swing and Sway with Sammy Kaye, you know, all those good things.
Step on the toes. Joe.
I just sum it up by saying we're all as excited as the other one is. But it's really not much more than sitting and drinking and possibly dancing if they want to do it. It's just a place to get together. Crosskeys then is just more expensive than Hobbit's Glen.
Yeah, I guess it's where you might find a crowd. It's kind of fun to go to Allview Inn if you like good Maryland crab cakes.
Crab what?
Crab cakes.
What's crab cakes?
Back fin crab meat out, Chesapeake Bay crabs.
Where all
Like-
pollution is.
Oh no, these are unpolluted, certified pure. My wife did a bacteria count on them, and they were all right. She doesn't let me eat raw oysters anymore. That's over on 108, just north of town, west of Route 29. It's a kind of a place where you'll find an interesting mix of new Colombians and old Hardtownians. I'm interested to hear from the groups. I don't know, I would say probably, I think there's 5 groups to report. And I suppose about 10 minutes, maybe per group, would be sort of a sensible time constraint. let's start out where people live. So we'll move to housing here from the group on housing. They gleaned from the day. Good, bad, or indifferent. I'm sorry, I don't think we can hear this or meetings going on. Yeah.
Well, our group started out real good. We started out in the rental townhouses. We talked to several people, got some ideas. Then we kind of fell apart. We lost each other. So Bill and Bev, I think, really got more information than we did. One thing that I was interested in, we talked to a guy that was here visiting his girlfriend, because the girl and two other girls had a townhouse, a 3-bedroom townhouse, and they were paying like over $100 a piece. But he said that he thought that two of them at least were really overextending themselves to stay here. That they had to have they felt that they had to have all the right clothes, drive the right kind of car, and everything. That's the only thing that was really special. There was one other thing that I can't remember, but that's pretty much. It seemed like the people were very transient. People that we talked to, one woman said that she had been living in Augsburg College, and she understood the place to be intended for people to stay there while they were waiting for their house to be built.
When we went to the rental townhouses, it seemed like everyone we talked to there hadn't been there very long, a couple months. One we talked to had been there just 1 week, and it seemed like that was, extremely transient. But then we moved on to the people that own their townhouses, and they seemed like, we got the impression that people would stay in the rental townhouses, and then, they mentioned that a number of people would, then get their own townhouse, and they'd go on, and the next move would be buy their own single dwelling, and that seemed to be happening in more than one case.
Were you into Faulkner Station townhouses?
And a couple of people we talked to were really glad to have someone to talk to, and they sensed a lot of the things that we've been talking about. The need for more low-income housing, but then realistically it was kind of unfeasible right now. Talking about federal government subsidy for low-income housing. Yeah, the one lady was really, really concerned about having her kids have something to do. She felt that a lot of things were provided, but that the kids either felt like it was given to them or something. She kind of got the feeling that maybe they were giving them too much, and the kids didn't maybe want that. They wanted maybe more input themselves or whatever. They wanted to have, develop themselves rather than just hand it to them on a platter or something like that. Then the last place we went to was low-income housing, interfaith housing area, and that's where we really got a lot of the insights on more of the problem aspects of Columbia. It seemed like we were kind of deluged with this one lady's ideas on what was wrong with the place. She said that we asked her if she was in on this Columbia package, and she said no, she wasn't, and they didn't join it because it cost a little extra, and she didn't like swimming and she didn't like skating, so she didn't see any reason to buy into it. She said that the market at Green Giants was really high priced. She found that she couldn't save any money buying there, so she said it was better for her to buy at Joseph Square or over in Oakland Mills. It seemed like she wanted more things to do for herself, but she didn't seem like they had the income to get involved.
One general comment that I found is that the people who lived in the townhouses or who were buying townhouses, they had a different outlook. You know, they had the money, and you know, they couldn't see nothing wrong with Columbia. You know, they were kind of blinded. And when we went to the low-income housing, you know, there was, you know, a different overall feeling. And just like I talked with one lady who had been mugged, and she still said there's nothing wrong with Columbia. That was her own personal feeling about that. She said that it didn't hurt her, and they didn't get nothing too much, but it just scared her, you know. And she still doesn't see nothing wrong with Columbia. You know, it's just, you know, it's the feeling that they have. And there was something else. I don't know. There's a feeling too that the residents who moved here, who were more active in community organizations and functions and dealing with problems, once they get here, they get less interested because Columbia doesn't have the intense problems in urban areas. Like one lady we talked to, she had said that she was very active in racial issues. What did she say? She told us where she came from, but I forgot now. And she said that when she got here, there was a problem in the schools, you know, of the students getting adjusted to each other, I guess, and the different ways of life that each group came from, the black and the white. And the people didn't want to deal with the problem realistically because they want to go along with the myth that Columbia doesn't have problems like that. And they tried to play it down as much, you know, instead of trying to bring it into focus and dealing with it realistically. And there was another thing. There was the community of Partridge
Courts.
Court. The real agent told me about how there are a lot of divorced women living there. I think about 10 in the unit who are just living there raising their kids. And I was, you know, brought to mind the need for counseling service, things like that. And that's something else that you wouldn't think happened. But, you know, like you see all these little kids running around, you just take for granted that they have a parent and a mother together, you know. So that's one thing I thought about.
One comment one lady made was that she says, I'm an outdoors person and I like to be outside. The one thing I found when I moved here is people stay inside.
So just one question. Most of the comments seem to have been negative, or you're just reporting the negative comments?
No.
That's not true?
No. Like I was telling you before about the woman who had been mugged, she still doesn't see nothing wrong.
So 50-50 type of thing?
Yeah, it was 50.
Yeah.
We talked to one person that felt that one advantage of Columbia was that it felt pretty safe here. They felt pretty safe in going biking like quite late at night. There didn't seem to be any apparent danger in comparison to maybe a larger city.
And most of the people, you know, the first thing they say is that they did like Columbia, then they made qualifications.
Generally, how did you find their level of openness to talk? Did you get any rebuffs? Many rebuffs?
Yes.
You got a lot.
We hit a string of about 8 townhouses. These are the old townhouses where there's no answer. You knocked on the door. In addition, I'd like to
And
say,
everybody has dogs.
yeah, I thought there were just supposed to be pets here, but there was all kinds of large dogs inside. Since he knocked on the door, woof woof.
Did you go to 10564? You probably had 2 at the door.
Yes.
One little one.
No, 2 little dogs.
There was one that had big one, about that big, and then another one that's
And we did have one slam in the face.
How did it feel?
It's better.
Rather disconcerting.
Rather disconcerting.
One lady had
I just said we were kidding.
pneumonia, she didn't want to expose So there were about 3 people. I don't live here. I'm just babysitting. I'm just visiting, you know.
You don't get that sophisticated of excuse unless you're not exposed time and time again.
One lady was very busy cleaning. She couldn't take any time out of the
Was it half and half, or more rebuffs than openness, or how did you feel about that?
I think we got more rejection.
More rejections.
Did we get any rejections at all in the first case? Did you get any?
I think most people that
People don't want to.
didn't want to talk were just busy themselves. I didn't really sense any real rejection from.
Not much hostility.
No.
No, just lack of interest.
Did they say anything about how they related to their neighbors? Was there any difference between like apartments and single dwelling houses?
In part of the report, the women that I talked to, they were saying that they got along with the neighbors and there was some interaction.
Townhouse or?
Rental
Yeah, rental townhouse. And when we got to the owner townhouses, everybody went their own way. You know, they didn't care what the neighbor around the corner, a couple of houses down, did. You know, and interfaith housing, the one made the comment that if you do something in the neighborhood, everybody else knows about it. So, I don't know if that's true or
Maybe both.
We asked if the people upstairs applied, the women downstairs beside me. He says, not me, the guy upstairs plays the piano with Johnny Bad. So she could hear it.
Any other questions?
What are the restrictions on pets? I haven't seen any dogs or cats running around. They just keep
Right, and that's general in the county. I mean, that's not a Columbia rule, it's a county rule as far as having pets running free.
Can you build like a kennel in the backyard instead of streets?
Doghouse. You know, I almost have to say I don't know, but my guess is the dog houses would be okay. I don't know. We don't use them ours are house pets. I built a doggy door downstairs that's free floating, and they go in and out, you know, whenever they want to. But we're one of the rare places that has a little fence. You've heard enough about fences. Ours, that Joe Friend was talking about. We're down toward the other end of the townhouse group that he lives in. And this group of 6, 7 attached dwelling people put low, attractive, redwood kind of fences along the back, and that's what that whole hassle was about. I wasn't in on that. That was done by the person that I bought my house from. So we have a little fence. It makes it kind of neat because our dogs can run in and out, and they've got a lot of freedom, and so do we.
Where do you live?
I live in this area that they said was cold and people weren't interested in it. I have an alternate statement of that.
Just to answer your question, there's a Howard County leash law, but if you want to let your dog out, and a lot of people let their dog out regardless, but if you want to allow them out, you want to build a fence, you have to get approval to build a fence by the architectural committee, which has to adhere to the architectural guidelines. And in order to do that, you have to have it used to be the approval, now it's the acknowledgement of 2 neighbors before you can even apply. And so when you're talking about big brotherhood, you can draw your own conclusions, but that's the process you have to go through to fence your yard, even with an aesthetically pleasing fence. God forbid a chain link fence.
Did you say you visited any homes in the Tilbury Woods area? So I've heard something that was considered sort of a unique housing area.
I don't think we're going to
We talked to we talked to a lady that had visited there, and she said, I don't think she said it. Something like it's kind of interesting to go up there because you could see some drunks or something walking around or something.
yeah.
Well, a student told me it was a ghetto of Columbia. Tell Minna she lives there, my secretary.
I noticed something
She'll
too
agree.
about interfaith housing, how it lacked the same amount of upkeep as the regular, apartment development. Like somebody had driven their car through it and messed up the lawn, and so it was just left like that. I guess maybe they'll do something this summer to replant grass or something like that. But the lady did have a lot of complaints about not enough storage space and the lack of laundry facilities in the house. She can't hook up her own washer because there's no drainage or whatever.
Lady in interfaith housing also said that she did most of her, or quite a bit of her shopping for clothes and that outside of Columbia. She found that the mall was too expensive.
You don't have to live in interfaith housing to come to that. With our 3 growing teenagers, we do very little shopping in the mall. We go to Sears or to Montgomery Ward's, one way or the other.
If you were in the mall, you'll notice Sears-like stores are not in the mall. You're not familiar with the chains here, or I don't think you are, but I don't know what the analogous chains are in Minneapolis, but they're always a step or 2 or 3 above what Sears would be. That's what you pay. That's beside the little boutiques that are ridiculous, I guess.
Davies and Woody's is upper high as a department store, generally, and Social Tone is a small notch below that. That would be my evaluation. It's still rather
It's certainly above the chain stores like Sears. It's an indication of the community they're serving.
Okay, I guess maybe we ought to push along. Maybe it'd be a good idea to check out the school group. Who was the school group? Okay, here we go. Speak a little louder so it's an echoey room.
Okay, we visited just about the whole range of schools. We visited the elementary schools, the middle schools, high schools, and even hit Antioch College system. And everybody's going to talk about certain things, and maybe by what they say, you can start picturing how the school system is unique because of the people that live here and attitudes and values they develop.
The first thing that you notice, physical thing about the buildings, when they all had it, was that they were built around a resource and media center, and there's some place for everybody to go to study. And around that, in the elementary school, were 4 major areas, open classrooms, team teaching went on. In the elementary school, the kindergarten was separate, and the other 3 were divided. Well, just randomly, the students were divided. We basically spent most of the time talking to the principal and one of the kindergarten teachers. Kindergarten teacher had found that she couldn't work very well with the other teacher, that she was supposed to teach her, so they had kind of divided it up. And I guess we heard some of the things, comments from other people that they were open classrooms and supposedly open team teaching, but that didn't always happen, and that was just one of the reasons.
The school, which is Longfellow School, I guess was originally set up while the principal before wasn't very imaginative, I guess. At least that's what the present principal seems to think. And being that the school is called Longfellow School, he took names for things in the school and renamed them. For instance, all these different sections, like what you would call pods in like middle school, would be, or are named after Indian tribes. So you have the Comanche, Mohawk, Omaha, Pawnee tribes. And the kindergarten even has, they're sort of separate, and they're called the Timothy. And it's really, I couldn't believe it, because they had things like, there's no shouting, for people to keep quiet and everything, but they've got at least two signs. One is peace, something like this, that seems to be used quite liberally. The other one is what I used to call the Cub Scout thing, which I guess is an Indian. That one of these students from this school did research and found that this sign in the Indian language meant something. What was it? Friends, yeah, it meant friends. So this is the friends sign for the school. It's really, it seems really funny in there. The kids were just bubbly and enthusiastic and seeing, really interesting things. And, it's just the neatest bunch of kids you've ever seen in your life. And it was really fun. We just wanted to stay there and talk to kids and stuff for a while. It was really fun.
Pass around this floor plan. This is an example of elementary school. We don't have them. Both the middle school and the senior high school are round. The elementary school isn't. But these are the 4 ponds, and these walls here are open. There's steps up, but it's not as closed as even it looks on the paper. And it says lower division, middle division, and upper division. That's not quite true in the sense that, like, the lower division might be 1 through 4, and this one might be 2 through 5, and it's a clustering, but it really isn't with grade.
The reason they gave the Indian names to different sections is because they used to be A, B, C, and D, and that kind of people would think, oh, is my child in the A group or the B group? And so they gave Indian names to get away from that. Where the latter didn't have really that much to do with what group was in.
I'm a little interested in one thing, then. You can check me out on this. I've heard a little bit of cynicism as you related the Indian names and so on. I know that Dr. Smith is known as Big Chief among them.
Right. Super Chief.
Yeah, right. And I caught a fair amount of reaction from the group when you related this. And immediately on the heels of that, you said the kids seemed enthusiastic, eager, into learning. I'm saying it a little differently. What's your reading on that?
I think it would be very hard to restructure a high school along the same lines. Maybe everyone with it, but it's the kind of thing that apparently has good chances of working in that age group. Kids don't think in terms of corny or not corny.
I think one thing we should have pressed him on, where I'd like to ask, is how much they explore that Indian motif in terms of education. But I don't know if they do.
Yeah, Jim Handlin would be able to help me on that because his youngest son is in there, and unfortunately he got ill late this afternoon, and I think he just wore out and got an upset stomach, maybe the flu bug. We've had a fair amount of flu around, so that's why he's not present tonight. He sends regards, greetings, and sorrow that he can't be with you.
Oh, one thing, if you want to learn more about the school, it's a pretty good large article that we were given that was in the newspaper a little while ago that we'll bring back to Augsburg with us that we need to put on reserve or something. So that it's really quite a thing. Another thing is that although they call it, definitely a free school and it's supposed to be really something that's been written up a lot, the person that we talked to at Augsburg College that also knows, really supposed to know a lot about elementary education, does not consider it really a free school. So there seems to be some difference of opinion. So I don't know. I don't really know enough about the free school concept to make any kind of judgment between the two. But anyway.
I want to know if I don't know if you picked this up or anything, but is this all the elementary school and middle school is to prepare the students, to get them into the grind of having to progress on their own, prepare themselves for the high school, right? Is that the general thing?
No, we'll get into that.
Yeah, let's go through the three and we'll respond to that. Because I wouldn't say that would be the.
Just one more thing about elementary school. The principal spends lunch with the kids so we can talk to them and socialize.
Okay, the two of us are going to report on the middle schools. The first thing that I became aware of when we got to the middle schools was the open design of the building. There were very few closed spaces, but yet it was still very orderly. There were a lot of kids walking around, and they were pretty much in control of themselves, but they weren't abusing it. But more important than that was the ideas that they were putting into this, and they were considering the natural ability of the child, not in comparison, to the other child. They weren't comparing the two, but just how far he was progressing according to his natural ability.
Could I interrupt? Were you told that, or did you observe that?
It was more told, because we didn't have that much time to observe it, like 45 minutes.
May I interrupt too?
Go ahead.
We rode the bus back from Wild Lake with a bunch of junior high girls. And they said, I'm smarter than you because I'm in so-and-so's class. And I'm smarter than you because I'm further along in such and such a book. So,
That's just a pride of teachers. But all the teachers work together. And like in social studies, there might be 4 teachers. And they all get together in one office and plan the whole schedule for all the students in that subject. And then they go out with a working plan, working together.
On their head.
On the same thing, the kindergarten teacher that we talked to at the elementary school said that there's, between the teachers, kind of a competition.
She said, when the principal comes in and says, you put 4 women together, they're supposed to cooperate. The principal says, okay, you're in charge, and the other look up to her and say, well, you know better than me, and then they sort of, that was their viewpoint. They didn't get to them as good as they should.
Yeah.
In these schools, do the teachers, most of them have the same degrees? I mean, so, I don't,
Oh, the only one we talked about that, actually. She wasn't going to go into
because I could probably see the competition type of thing, if they had a higher degree.
They don't give grades A, B, C, D. They give little evaluation sheets, and it's not getting away from grades a lot, but it's a little bit, and we'll pass them around and look at it.
It indicates to the parents a little bit where, if any problems lie, instead of just a general error. If they think their kid isn't achieving as well in mathematics, you just see a big D there. But this goes into more detail, so the parents, if they know anything about that subject, can't help their children.
To deal with the functional aspect of education, that is, to get the child to function in society and be able to talk to other people rather than just learn facts and be able to regurgitate them. And that they're free to an extent, but they do have certain must-do periods where they have to sit down and study for a certain amount of time, but that's limited to maybe an hour or 2 a day.
On the facilities at the school were excellent. I've never seen a school as well equipped as that.
It
was just unbelievable how good.
And the principal said that one factor in problems with children is that there are a lot of single parents here, and that tends to bring up problems like other children who can't concentrate because they don't have a father or they don't have a mother.
And that's a point that we heard in every one of the 3 schools, that there's a high incidence of emotional problems among kids because Columbia tends to attract single parent families that want a new start with their kids, or families where there are marital difficulties and thinking that by coming to Columbia they can cure it, and within the first couple of months it's, there's a good deal of problem. And so they said there's a high incidence, very high rate of emotional problems, and that the kindergarten teacher was very interesting. She said, in terms of And she pointed out to this kid and that kid and said, you know, you can tell just what the parents and what the home situation by knowing the kid. And she said that when they come in for conference, it always follows, you know, you just think,
Oh, we should mention something about the students with learning disabilities. They weren't separated from the rest of the school population. They had special education teachers that were set aside with the kids for like 40 minutes, an hour during the day. But other than that, the kids would be with the rest of the group. So, you know, you didn't have any adverse effects on the kids. They went down on themselves. They thought they were different from the others.
What about school psychologists then? Is there a certain ratio? Are there school psychologists if there are emotional problems with the kids?
well, the middle school had a consulting there's a consulting psychiatrist from mental health. They also had 2 counselors. There's 3 pods, clusters of people, and one counselor took 1.5 pods, the other took the other 1.5. I don't know when she said counselor what that meant for sure, you know.
And at the school, there's 14% non-white students and 14% non-white teachers. And they're different elevation. They're different pods, we call them Myers, Venus, and Jupiter.
He emphasized how hard it was for him to get 14% black teachers. But he got it.
But students don't like that type of education. They can't transfer it well.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
They don't like that open education. They can transfer it well to a traditional school.
Yeah. Where would that be?
Well, there's
Howard County School.
yeah, any of the Howard County
No, there was some plumbing like that too. They were all designed the same as, am I right? They were all
there are
designed as
2.
open schools.
Well, no, it's typically there, isn't it? Well, you mean in Howard County?
No, they designed.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but then it depended upon the principal of the school if they wanted it to be an open school. Yeah. So you can have a closed school and an open school facility, vice versa.
One interesting comment, he said that there's a school almost similar design, I think, in Poughkeepsie, you know what it's called. Anyway, some town, it's a similar open design, but a very, very closed tradition. School.
You noted the incidence of single-parent families. Were you able to check out, you talked about one reason for them coming is a new start. Did you check out how it might relate to the fact that upon investigation, a single-parent family might be attracted to Columbia because there are good daycare facilities here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm asking, I know you didn't, it's a rhetorical kind of a question, but I wonder if you would sense that kind of interrelatedness to some of the stuff that you heard yesterday in terms of why they would come. That might be a factor. I'd share with you a personal experience. My youngest son, 12 years old, he'll be 13 in about 3 weeks, and we'll have our 3 teenagers then, is petit mal epileptic. He has, he's the brightest of our 3 kids. He's got one heck of a head on his shoulders, and the least application of the goodies that he's got. We've learned a lot about it, and I kind of describe that type of epilepsy. It doesn't go into grand mal seizures, and so on. You have the withdrawal from reality, which I think I can do myself too. But actually, you have almost a trance with your eyes open on occasion. But in that process, through the electroencephalograms and the neurological studies that have been done, I became aware that, and my symbol of it is that the electricity in the brain waves that are going on, has a lot more sunspots to it than a person who is not afflicted with epilepsy, and they flash and they flare up, and it emanates in hyperactivity. He can't sit still. He's got a terrible time sitting still for any length of time, 15, 20 minutes. He's got to move. And when we lived in Virginia, he had a neat second grade teacher, he had a good third grade teacher, and from fourth grade on, my description of the degree of openness of the teachers that he had in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade might be there, and it might be there. And I empathized with the teachers from the standpoint that here you had 32 to 34 kids, oversized classes, sitting in straight desks, and you got a kid like Richard, who can't go. And you can't let the whole thing go down the drain because of one person and create it. There you go. He had one teacher in the fifth grade who every time he jumped like this, she'd assign him a page in the dictionary to copy at night. Very creative discipline. And the kid was through Webster's Unabridged up to I before the end of the year. It was very, very, very neat stuff. And the background leads me to the fact that as he arrived here last year, he was in the middle school last year, he got into his hassles and his behavior problems and so on. And we kind of worked with him up there, with the teachers and with him, and we've had one major one this year. But I perceive that the difference in dealing with that faculty is that they have sufficient training and background to be able to separate the behavior from the person. The kid lives with increasingly good, okay feelings about himself as a person and can deal with his own behavior problems as problems, and the teachers seem to do that too. And I've noticed on a scale going like this with him, motivation for learning beginning to happen with him for the first time in about the last 5 years. And so I react rather positively to it in general. It's kind of
tremendously high statements on the part of administrators about the fact.
Yeah. They said if they get any teachers that don't adjust, they just go out. And the ones that stay have to work extra hard, but they feel so much better because they work so hard better.
Yeah, you think that teachers have to work harder in this kind of a system than in a straight system?
Extremely hard.
About twice as hard.
Our guide for the students, we had an 8th grade girl, and she said when I came to the school, I was kind of quiet. I always did my work and handed it in on time and everything, but I didn't talk to anybody. But she said, well, after a month or two, everybody else was talking, so I did too, and she really got into it. And she said she taught a couple of classes. Last year she taught them in transportation. This one year she's teaching them in Africa.
The other one thing you notice in all 3 schools when you walk in, there's a much higher noise level.
Yeah. Much higher
noise level.
Yeah. Which seems to deter learning, or?
Well, coming from the system, you immediately think, how can they learn? And then you see them learning. And so
Well, to go to the senior high levels, when I was picking up, it was really something to see a building like that. It was round. The building was not as open as the other two that we went to see, the middle school and elementary, because it was much like the walls on each room separated each other, and the fronts were just open so that the people could walk in and out. And placed in the center of this was a library, which you could see from a staircase. It was the banister type that would look down on the library. You could watch and see all the people when they were sitting there studying. And we came at lunchtime, and it was really quite loud and noisy. It was much like a college around there, except for people were more friendly. They were talking with each other and running around and jumping more. I suppose they were more energetic. But then we walked around and we watched them, and as we came back, there was some kids sitting over in a corner playing a guitar and singing, and it was really quite nice. I don't know really how to explain it, but the classrooms, the kids themselves didn't really like the school the way it's set up, because they felt it was too open. They didn't have any pressure on them, to go ahead and strive themselves. They had just come out of a system over the past years, for the past 8 years, that they've been pressured and pushed all the time to do this and do that, and all of a sudden you're given a free hand, and they don't really know what to do, which is much like college. And I would say the senior high level would kind of develop and help a person go into college. But they wish that this would have started a few years before, so they could kind of fed into it a little bit easier instead of getting it all at once.
You recall you heard some of that Sunday night.
Yeah.
You heard some alternate opinions from my daughter, for example.
You know, it's maybe Beck's not here now, but I don't think it's not so much that, you know, the other two are preparing them for the grind in high school in terms of, but it's that kids in high school now have not had the other two to become familiar with that style of education.
From college, where I'm at now, I could see going in there and doing that work and being able to do it, but being in high school, I know it'd just be one big party because you could skip classes and you could just sit. The idea was to study together. It would be a co-learning situation, but I suppose to sit down and read and ask each other questions. But I know that doesn't work unless, you know, you really have a time to sit down where it's quiet. And she said, the lady that we were talking to, the superintendent, vice principal, she said if she had it to do over, or if she could help plan, she would have set in a few more quiet areas where the kids could go off by themselves and study with it. She had questions and problems with kids not being able to study. It's just too noisy. They can't get away from all the noise and congestion of people running around all the time. And if it's not loud noise because of the carpeting and the other fixtures that absorb noise, it would be just the motion. If you're sitting reading a book and you see a couple people walk by, usually you'll look up. Notice that, like in the library at Augsburg, if you ever, when you're sitting, as soon as somebody walks by, you know, you're up looking around, and then you go down and put your head down for a few more seconds, and you look up and see what's going on. But another thing that impressed me was the grading system they had. The college, or the high school, holds about 940 people, and the grading system runs from what you'd consider the ages of 9th grade to 12th grade. And you have to fulfill 18 credits, and you can take more or less, whatever your speed would desire. But they do not fail anybody. They do not give any F's or any D's at the school. But they give A's, B's, and C's. But you have to get a C to get through the course. You have to fulfill so much work and so many requirements to get out of the course before you can progress on to the next stage, which I suppose will stop a lot of kids from just being passed on with D's. A lot of teachers just like to give a kid a D just to get rid of him and pass him on to the next grade, where a person doesn't do any work, but he just sits there, he puts his time in. And now they're making the person to put out, you know, get some work in there, or they just don't make it. And they're working on the idea that you can finish school maybe a year or even 2 years earlier than you normally could, because you could go to summer school and pick up extra credits. And since the state of Maryland won't let you graduate, I think you have to go over the 11th grade, or you have to go through the 11th grade. And some of these kids are going to be done after the 10th grade, or after their 10th year of high school. And they're setting up a program with the colleges in Columbia so that they can be actually registered as they're going to school, but yet they're going to college and picking up college credits, so that they're not tied down with other people, you know, sitting around and having the problems of not having anything to do. Whereas some of the people are at the 9th grade level, but yet they're doing 11th and 12th grade material.
Yeah, I think the 10-year thing, you know, they'll be finished in 10 years, will kind of be only as the whole system becomes working, and then, right, you know, you pick up year by year all the way through. It's not as if somebody's going to be go to high school and they'll be done in a year.
Could I really, I don't know anything about Augsburg College. Is that at all on the freedom to do what one chooses to do plan, or the structured courses and lectures and laboratories and ABCDEs, or
pretty structured?
Yeah.
Pretty structured.
I was just wondering if
there is more independent study, however, being done.
Okay. I just wondered if this is the time for the transition, but I'd be interested, regardless, and bring it up in a few minutes, between the feeling you had about the high school freedom, and I know you were at Antioch, and whether you got some feedback as to how that type of freedom, because that's the avant-garde, or the avant-garde. I mean, you do whatever you want. And I wonder if you could relate that on the college level also, and these feelings. I'm not trying to get...
I felt that the high school kids were more free than we are in college to do things, because they could choose any classes they wanted to. And
Where are you trying, I'm not quite clear on what, do you see that as an appropriate model, or?
That, yes, I think this is a problem in higher education today. There are new colleges blossoming, there are schools that aren't accredited that are coming up, there are schools that are accredited that are finding this a new educational style and process. And I'm very prejudiced as to whether I think it's good or bad. That's the point right now. I just wondered whether you thought that process, that free process, should be extended into college. And if it is, whether college students can handle it. And I'm talking generally now. I mean, each one of you probably say, yes, I can, because I'm obviously smart enough and mature enough. But
I won't say that.
You don't?
I'm having a hard time handling the independence of college as it is. The little bit of independence that we do have. Because I come from a very, very structured background.
I think there's the key again, just like the thing we've seen in relation to high school in relationship to the lower grades here, that, students who haven't been prepared from the beginning to deal with that have a hard time dealing with it. To me, it's tremendously attractive as a style for education, and I guess I'm kind of in the process of constantly pushing for more.
I wish I could do it. Let's put it that way. I really would like to be able to do it. I just admit I know I can't.
It's kind of an interesting thing, I think all day today we didn't see one single time where there was a teacher in front of a row of seats in class, right?
Right.
I saw some.
Music.
They have a group there that has asked for some more structured experiences, and they're trying to build that into it, where some who need it and feel they need it will be in a more structured situation within the same school.
I think the other thing in there, we heard a lot about the kind of, free this, free that, do anything you want, and yet they kept creeping in. I found myself hearing about rules, and you can't do this, and you can do this, and I kept thinking, well, now wait a minute, it's not really free, and like, maybe that's necessary, but then let's not really say it's completely free, because, in some things I thought, no, wait a minute, now they don't really have to do that, you just kind of have these images of, well, they, never take roll, never do this, never do that, and they take roll probably more than
every 28 minutes. Yeah. And my daughter, right now, she was pretty calm the other night, but if you really got her turned on to the subject, she is literally bitching up a storm about the fascist empire at the high school. Okay? And I understand that because she came in last year as a junior and was kind of given a set of expectations. And she slips, Marianne, glasses, squatting on the floor there with dungarees, little farm girl from New York City. She came out of a very structured thing in Virginia and grooved on the freedom and produced. And everything that they impose now by a new rule, she resents highly. On the other hand, my perception, she doesn't agree with me right now, I don't think. And, I may be very well wrong. My perception is that if she moved from where she is now into typical high school, I don't know what she'd do. I don't know what I do. I don't know what she do. That's another question, incidentally, in mobile society.
One of the fellows in Antioch, the first guy, yeah. Made an interesting statement. I think that kind of responds to what you were asking, that, no form in and of itself is the answer. And that, the task of education is to help people find what they need to find. To help people just learn themselves what they need to learn. And that there are a number of ways to do that, and that an inspiring, dynamic kind of lecture, a guy gets up and, I think he says, gets up and rants for 45 minutes, but if it's dynamic and powerful and inspiring, then it's valid. So maybe, if we're talking about future forms for education, maybe we're talking about a constant kind of blend of a lot of those scores.
I'm sorry. Do you feel, I just want to ask you a question, do you feel that there's too much structure now where you are? Do you complain about that? Is that a pain in the neck? Yeah.
The way I feel about it is that, like my last semester of classes, people came in talking about lecturing for us, and they came with the assumption that they had the expertise. And I feel that nobody knows it all. And I, resent.
Watch that, of course, everybody that teaches has the expertise.
I mean, but let me just ask.
Where was this? At Hammond.
Do you feel that you do better, or you'd rather have it in a more free style, that you'd rather be able to choose your own way, learn yourself, approach subjects by yourself, and that you get more out of it that way? And if you really could have that option, would you take it, or would it scare the hell out of you, because then you really couldn't be a doctor?
Well, let Beverly, haven't you already taken that option? This term?
I don't understand.
Right? Well,
I don't understand
I mean, you're sort of on your own.
Yeah.
This term.
Yeah.
You're not going to classrooms.
No.
A lot of your work is done in cooperative education or internship. You might tell them about that. The internship with the.
Right now?
Well, I don't know if you want or not. It's up to you. But I think she's got an interesting situation for her learning.
I'm wondering whether you're trying to get at a point that maybe was brought up previously, that whether or not you're doing your own thing on your own, or whether there's someone one way or another instructing you to do something, it's not a question of whether there's I like to use the word discipline. It's not the question of whether that exists or not, it's whether it's more external or internal. I really don't think you can do your own thing unless you've got the discipline to know what it is you want to do. It takes for me to go into a free, if I've got 30 days to do whatever I want to, and at the end of 30 days I've got to turn in a report or review or something like that, that's a much more difficult thing than if somebody hits me over the head every day and says, do this, because the natural human tendency is to kind of let things slide around a little bit like electricity.
I had an unusual thing happen, and I want to share with you. It'll take exactly 30 seconds. We had a group at Antioch, and we were involved in a truly interdisciplinary ecological study in the valley, and we had geologists and hydrologists working with us, and the students were concerned with demography and economics, etc. And they were all very, very happy, and we were paying them to go to school because the contract money went back to the students, and it was a unique type of thing. And everybody, at the end of that session, and we produced a rather large and impressive report, they all went back to Johns Hopkins-like schools, because they all realized that in order to be effective in society, in real society, they had to have those people who thought they had the expertise, and maybe they were full of it half of the time, but that other half, they needed it. And they needed those tests, and the grades, and the lecterns, and the seats, and I don't know how many other people have found this to be the case, but I wonder how useful a lot of the so-called permissive, non-structured courses will be if one doesn't have that as a background to move further so that he has that discipline.
But you're going to New College, which is in between, right?
In between.
Okay, I mean,
to have unstructured, you gotta raise your hand to the word.
You forget I'm the leader. I had a priority.
There are no leaders. No, I'm seeing a kind of what I think is, to me, is kind of a humorous sort of paradox, and that is that we have come halfway across the country to study Columbia, Maryland. And Columbia, Maryland is a product of the mindset that towns have been built just haphazard. Everybody does exactly what the MO please and just turned out into a mess. So we came to a place now that has been completely planned before it was built. And what kind of a school system do they have? Anytime they want to do it. That's funny I just laugh.
I think you need a certain amount of structure, a certain amount of openness.
And there was.
Maybe there's another issue, maybe it's not just a question of structure or no structure, but a question of classroom, well, but I'm talking of styles of learning, you know, the style in terms of, you know, classroom, you know, feed-in kind of stuff, and experiential learning, which can be structured too, you know, with well-defined goals.
I'll have to say that at first year that I had at Augsburg, for instance, was pretty well structured. And don't ask me right now to tell you what I learned, but I think if I sat down and thought about it, I can tell you exactly what I learned that year. I'd have to go back and remember the classes I had. But I worked for a very short time at St. Mary's Hospital as an orderly. And I was in the extended care center. And I cannot tell you what I learned there, but I know that I learned more there in my whole year, and that was only like maybe 20 times that I worked there. 20 different, nights that I worked. And I know I learned more there. I can say that, but I can't tell you what. And I don't have any degree to prove it.
That's it. If you want to work completely open, then you need college. You want to have your own because they want an education. But no. Yeah, right. Well, that's it. See, we want to. That's where we're going to college.
We're in the same kind of a bind that we were in yesterday, and there are other groups to report. I don't care how long you wrap, but I don't want to shortchange some of the other groups, so I'm going to yes.
Can I say something like that to the education process before?
Sure.
That was it seems to me like in a planned community like this, you have a perfect opportunity to have a well-coordinated school system with a systematic rationale for the whole system. Like it'd be a real great chance to experiment with coordinating, making a smooth transition from one school to the next, and having similar types of education, especially motivational factors. What's making the kids learn what they're learning, And instead, I really heard a lot of evidence today that things were just not smooth one to the next. They're going backwards and forwards, especially different motivational factors. The administrators do not communicate with each other at all. Are only superficially, really a superficial coordination among the schools. They really didn't know what the next school was doing. And to me, that seems really dangerous.
What I suppose we have to look for is organized disjunction. Or organized disorder or something.
One question that we asked, that Joel asked of each school, is whether this kind of structure or this kind of system could only be done in the club. Can be attributed to the assets of Columbia, the openness of the people. And every administrator said that it was an advantage to be in Columbia.
Yeah, they have an absolute degree of success.
Because of what?
Because the structure was possible because they were in Columbia.
In a new town.
I don't think I'd agree with that's what they said.
Well, from freedom to law and order, what'd you learn about law?
I think we're going to combine ours. The first two groups went an hour. Seeing that we got two areas, we're going to take up 15 minutes, and that time we'll shut up. Three of us, Gary, Larry, and I went out, and Gary and I had set out to kind of look at the retail end of the commercial enterprises in the city, and Larry was going to specifically cover the security, the police force, and that. And we ended up at Wild Lake together, so we just decided, well, let's stay together the whole day. Let's do this thing together, and so we covered both areas, commercial and security. And I think first we look at the commercial enterprises here in Columbia. Columbia, of course, is developed as a commercial enterprise here to make money, and there's no exception to that when we look at the business community. Each village, of course, is set up with their own village center, which provides perhaps ideally about 90% of the needs of the people in the community. The thought being, of course, is that the people won't have to get in their cars and drive to the stores. They can perhaps walk to their village center, or they won't have to go very far. to buy their groceries and their pharmaceutical needs and a few other specialized services there. In reality, people are still very attached to their cars, and some people really like the grocery store in Wild Lake, so they drive all the way over from one side of the town to go to the grocery store there. Some people like the dry cleaning service in Oakland Mills, so they'll drive all over town for these services depending upon where they like. And so ideally, these village centers are not perfect. They had some problems with the village centers to begin with, especially in Oakland Mills. Because what had happened, Wild Lake, I can't, all these terms going through my head, was set up, the community was built, and then the village center was put in. Now right away, the merchants there had an advantage because they already had a consuming village around it. In Oakland Mills, they had put in a village center, and at the time they put in the center, I think there were something like 700 people living around the whole center. They started with the center and built out, and so the people who own stores in Oakland Mills, a lot of them just died the first couple of years waiting for the city to be developed. And now they've learned from that in the surrounding communities of Owen, Brown, and Longreach. They are not going to even put in a village center until they achieve a population of around 7,000 people, so that the merchants who take part in the village center can be supported. Another reason why we heard there was a lot of merchants perhaps having a hard time was because of the rent. And the bicycle shop, this bicycle shop over here in Wild Lake, for his shop, he said he was paying $570 a month, which you got to $570 a month. You got to sell a lot of bicycles. Rent a building. But it isn't too far out of line with they said overall what you have to pay in an area, in this particular area, to rent a high-class shop. Ideally, the bicycle shop owner told us the best place to sell bicycles is out of a garage, someplace you could rent for $50 to $100 a month, with low overhead. That's how businessmen make money, but you can't do that in Columbia because everything is brand new. And so he's sitting there with a pretty big rent bill. The economic climate, I think, is healthy now in Columbia. It's starting to pick up. They have the mall, and like I think we discussed earlier, the prices are not cheap there. It's a mall, very similar to what we have in Minneapolis. But every space available in that mall is taken up. It has full occupancy. And in talking to the people there, they have a very little, I think they had 2 stores that didn't make it there, out of all the stores that are there. And they hope to break ground this summer to add on another wing on this mall for 2 more large stores and 80 more small stores. And I also talked to another man there who lives in Baltimore and commutes here to work. And he said in Baltimore, he says, he says, maybe once a year I'll go down to downtown Baltimore because, there's nothing really there worth going to. And he says they have a few malls in Baltimore, but he says, I've been to a mall, and this is the best one. And I think he was, part of the people in Outline County. I suppose I sensed a little George Wallace, and he says, well, there's about 2 or 3 of them that are just about all colored, and I don't like to go over to, And so a lot of these people from this area are coming into Columbia, into that mall to do their shopping. So Columbia, draws from a big area. So economically, they're doing all right. One last thing, I suppose I should have mentioned, we were talking about is village centers, is how they're designed. And for instance, Wild Lake. Am I saying that right? I can't ask that. They have the giant grocery store over there. And they have the grocery store in the parking lot where the whole village center is around the grocery store. And then they have the rest of the shops and the view over here. Now the owners were complaining there they should have the grocery store on the other side because your traffic of people coming in, a large percentage will just go to the grocery store and leave. It would be much more beneficial for them if they could have the traffic of people walking in the front of their shops. And just, because of the larger number of traffic, people buy on impulse and will come in and generate more business. And they thought perhaps, their centers hadn't been, really designed with that in mind. And they had a few hassles too, the high cost of upkeeping out there. They said in the Wild Lake Village Center, they plant new flowers every 2 weeks there in the summertime, to keep the place pretty. And they had gone $14,000 over their budget on maintenance last year, when the individual shopkeeper has to take that. But overall, I think Columbia is really healthy economically. We also now went to the security. Of course, Columbia does not have their own police force, but they do have a couple private Rouse Company security forces, and one is located, has its offices over in the Wild Lake Village Center here, and Mr. Blankenheim? Mr. Blankenheim? He's the man in charge. Now they didn't have a security system here at all until a year or two ago when the incidents of crime began to get a little higher, and I suppose it's like a typical Rouse Company answer to all the problems. They just go around the country to find the best people, and pay them $50,000 a year and give them an office and a big staff and new equipment, and I suppose that's how they tackle the problem. But this guy...
You would be amazed how low salary Rouse Company employees get just for staff alone. Except a few key ones.
Well, this guy is a lawyer. He's black, he's a lawyer. He's been a principal of a high school, assistant principal. He helped to investigate the Attica incident in New York State. And he's worked with many prisons and with youth groups, and now he's here in Columbia showing residents what type of locks to put on their doors. And he's the general security agent in the town. He did point out to us, people come to Columbia and say, this is the utopia, this is crime-free over here. And so they leave their doors open in their houses. They don't leave them unlocked, so they leave them open. They had a guy came into the shopping center the other day, and he left his car running, and they put a guard to watch the car, and the guy was in the store 45 minutes with his car running. And if you do that in a big city, that car is going to go away. And he said people are really dumb, and he said the construction is bad here. The houses don't have adequate security protection in them. He had a specialist with him one day, and they went to some of these houses that had the sliding glass doors, and they just went on the door, and when you hit it at a certain spot, the lock just busts open. It just is bypassed, and the door just comes right open. You don't need any tools; you just need your fist, and the door comes right out. And the locks are bad, and so he's been, as an advisory position, to try and develop better security in construction. And he said the crime has been going up, mainly in burglary. And what he really worries about is that it's so easy to rob things out here that perhaps he foresees in the next few years
people, the criminals in Baltimore and Washington getting wind on this. This is just like a paradise for them. I mean, the average income is $16,000, and you can't go wrong. You know where the low income housing is, so just anywhere else. And so he's really afraid of that. Criminals will come out here and just have a good time.
He also mentioned the fact that there's one 7-Eleven store that faces inward. When the police go by, they can't even see inside. And I think he mentioned that was the same store that got robbed 12 times. During about a month or 2 weeks.
The architect's view was it for to face the open trees while you're shopping. And the bricks are against the street. And you have to park on the street side. You gotta get out of your car to walk around. And finally, the guy who was the manager got tired of having a gun pointed at his face all the time and decided he wasn't going to keep being lucky, so he sold out. And there was no security consultants when they started planning the city. And I think the thing we became aware of is that, in planning the city, you have to take that into consideration. And I think we picked up some good insights there. Then we talked to the security people down at the mall. Oh, by the way, this security system, this guy is ahead of. They pay $3 an hour, which is a little higher than your normal burn security and all this. And they've trained these people at the community college, and they're a little higher class. And he says 5 of his guards have either BA or BS degrees. 2 have their masters, and 1 is working now on his PhD. And the reason they're working on this for $3 an hour is because they think it's such a wonderful experience. Because they work in the community and work with a lot of kid groups and all this, and so perhaps this may explain why they never have to pay people too much around here, is because a lot of them probably come for the experience to be a part of this. And down the mall, they also have a security system, and there's people walking around in sort of suit coats and walkie-talkies, and they just sort of keep order down there. Shoplifting, I think the merchants just sort of write it off as a business loss at the end of the year. There isn't too much prosecution as far as shoplifting, and they don't do too much really to curb it. And the security agents are in the mall really aren't too excited about it. It really didn't impress me that they had to do too much down there.
I talked to one shopkeeper who says the only shoplifting they have is little kids, no professional.
Yes, I don't know, anything there you want to throw in?
I might say that we kind of got a sense that the community has really a favorable attitude towards the police. I don't know why this is, we couldn't hardly look at the police department. But most people seem to really like the police well. They're sort of well paid, but it's not very well in comparison to the other towns.
Police, I'm sorry, just my comment. The police, by the way, in the county are not well paid. It's one of the lowest paid in the state. Howard County Police.
They're making $8,300 starting, and they just asked for a pay raise of $1,500. So they'll get approximately $10,000
if they get the raise right.
I just wanted to reinforce the point that he made about the mall and the shopping area. Like a couple of women that I talked to, they were saying that they go to the mall and see their kind of people. That's what she said. Her kind of people. She said she goes to the mall and sees her kind of people pretty much similar to herself. But when she goes to this shopping center outside of Baltimore or somewhere, she sees the poor, In other words, that's what she was saying.
That was a very good report. I just had one, I think, a nuance or a little correction. The reason Wild Lake did so well was not necessarily because the city was around it before it was in. Because when Wild Lake was in, the village of Wild Lake, that was it. The mall wasn't here, and anybody who lived in Columbia had to go to that village or Stockholm, 10 or 15 miles away. And once the mall did go in, that village center and other village centers really, really had trouble. Not only did many of the stores move out into the mall, but the stores that were left, it just used to be a hubbub of activity. And as you say, when people don't pass the stores, that ceased, and they all have problems.
This question of timing of various inputs must be a very delicate one anyway, you're planning a new town.
Yeah. They've had a lot of problems.
Yeah. Even Wild Lake had a good amount of turnover as far as moving into the mall and that. Like many would move in the mall, like they use the village centers just as waiting. And then they'd be able to move in. And like talking to, like you'd think maybe with two big, large department stores that at first hand, maybe you'd think of them as Sears or Penny's, that type of chain where maybe they're a little lower cost. So then you'd think, well, that maybe keeps the rest of them competing with lower prices. But then to find out that they're like Dayton's and really your upper price levels, then the others can really have the higher prices. And when you talk to the clerks around it, they say, well, it's not, we just think the prices aren't high. They feel they're within the range of everybody.
Well, I think we can witness that right in Minneapolis with Dayton's. It's sort of an upper class. But people buy there because they're buying from Dayton's, and Dayton's has a certain amount of prestige, and you equate them with quality, and you can usually trust. And even if a big discount store moved right in that mall, I think those other two would still do good business because people like to buy prestige those goods.
Two observations. The card and gift shop in Wild Lake Village Center will probably go out of business. They desperately need traffic flow walking past. It's an impulse buying shop. The cheese shop, the butcher shop, and the liquor store are making it big. They're making it fine. That's my impression. I think the bike shop is going to, because of the resurgence in bicycling. He's back over 2 or 3 months. He's selling all the
the bike shop. Right now he's finding it really difficult making it right now. But like for next year, he's already projected. Well, now he's going to go into the winter outfitting of sporting goods and that to pick up that slack where he's not selling the bikes. But otherwise, like Jim was saying as he took us over there, that bikes internationally are hotcakes. They're so hard for him to pick up and order. Like 1 month, they can just blow his whole supply. He has to wait 3 months to get it.
I don't know if anybody has mentioned this to you, but the mall, if you've been to the mall, it's theoretically going to be 4 times as big again. In other words, there will be 4 sections, the size of the section that's been built before it's completed.
102 stores, it'll end up close to 400 stores.
The new addition, they figure to hope to break ground this summer will have 80 more small shops. Right, that's just one other addition.
It'll bring it close to the 200 level. The card and gift shop in Wild Lake had the option to be the card and gift shop in the mall. The couple who bought that were semi-retired. It was kind of a dream to do that kind of a thing, and they were doing an excellent gross before the mall opened. When decision time came to move, these shop owners have first options. That's part of what happens in the village centers. About 2 months before that, the man had a heart attack, and they missed the whole thing. By the time they became aware, and you can test all of that out, as far as communication and what have you, a card and gift shop was in the mall, and they lost it. And it's going to be very tough.
The other thing is it's more expensive to move into the mall. A lot of people decide the hell with it. They'd rather stay in the village center. And shops like that shop when I visit down the store.
The second observation on the police department, people being friendly to them, I'll say one thing with a lot of good feeling about it, particularly the Howard County Police Department. They were wise enough to contract for and get some very intense human relations training. And I would rate the Howard County Police Department, particularly when you know and you've heard enough about the rural mindset and background of Howard County out of which that grows, as an extremely courteous, well-trained department on the whole. There was some good wisdom in that. And it's an I guess there are a couple of blacks on it now, but it basically was kind of white Wallace mindset police force, and they were put through extremely difficult sensitivity training, trying to get their hands on what black militancy is all about and how to handle stuff outside of the club relationship to law and order. And it's been fairly effective so far. Okay, guess we gotta move. We've got, that's 4-1 left. Healthcare. Pardon? Oh yeah, let's hear about the women's group and then wrap it up with healthcare. How many of you went to the women's group? You got in? Yeah, let's hear it.
The Women's Center operates out of the Inner Center over in Wild Lake. They have meetings Tuesday and Thursday morning, about a 2-hour meeting. And this morning was on lesbianism. The turnout is very diverse, like the women range in age from the older ones to the younger ones. And I don't know if do you want to go into what the speaker was about or what? There's like 500 women that are involved. Like they put out a newsletter, and 500 women in Columbia received that newsletter. Approximately 12,000 women in Columbia. And afterwards, we talked to one of the women who seems like she's more involved. We didn't get to talk to the one woman,
Louise Everhart.
who is, what's her title?
She's actually a part-time staff member of CCM and has developed this kind of as her dream along with some other folks who are involved.
And
what can we do? Sorry, go back to Sunday. That's, we're into that. 10 years ago.
Well, an interesting thing that happened was, the meeting was supposed to be about lesbianism, but the questions ended up back to childcare and raising a family, and all the women got into that, and all of a sudden one woman raised her hand and she said, "What are we doing?" We're back in the old dilemma of women talking about babies, and that's all they can talk about because that's all anybody ever teaches them or lets them talk about, And it really got a rise out of everybody. And they also decided that maybe they didn't talk about lesbianism because everybody was a little uptight about it and didn't want to, and it was easier to escape into the traditional.
From the male point of view, I think the women in Columbia probably more so than a cross-section of a similar group in probably any other non-Newtown area have a tougher time because to live here, most of these women have husbands who are successful. The average income is 16 grand a year, so that must mean they're successful in the standard ongoing processes of society, which also probably means that they've got the similar mindset, or that, it's my way of thinking, it was almost like the stereotype successful Mr. Businessman, and there he was out, I'm bringing home the 16 grand a year woman, and you take care of the kids, and you feed them, and all that stuff. That's your job, this is my job, and that's fine. The thought was running through my head, boy, I wonder what would happen in one of these meetings. They could drag their husbands in here, and I bet they'd have to drag them in to confront them with the thing that, yeah, man, you're liberated, you got pools and all that, but here's your wife doing the same things that they're doing, in Center City, Minneapolis. It's a gilded cage, but it's still a cage, and she's no more free than she was there. And that's the thing that really hit me. I think I learned a whole lot about it. I came into there not liking the whole lesbian thing and homosexuality. I feel that I learned a whole lot from the speaker. She really had something to say.
Don't you think these women tell their husbands that every day?
No. They remind me of my mother. She lived 20 years in a community of 1,000 when all she had to do was she kicked my father hard enough. There's a community that he works in that's 20,000 where there are women that think. In Buell, they only think in terms of what they're going to fix tomorrow and what they're going to wear today, and that's it.
Also, there was a hint of a problem with the Women's Center doesn't have very much money, and the men control the money, and the women can go if it's free. But otherwise, there's babysitting offered there. There are a lot of women with little babies with them. at the time, and also we talked to one woman who was living in a single-family dwelling and has since gotten divorced, and she said that it was a typical suburban coffee party type of thing, and that all the wives who had high education, but the conversation centered around family, children, housework. So.
Let's face it, girls, that's your role. It takes some running strong.
You and I are getting the same syndrome tonight.
Is that your impression of the women in Columbia?
No, not totally. I think it's true, from my perspective, more of the younger women than of the smaller group of more middle-aged women. And the dichotomy and the trap comes is, well, I'll give you an example. My wife and I were through the human sexuality thing, 6-day one in Minneapolis, University of Minneapolis Men's School in conjunction with our Division of Social Service. And I found, it may be prejudicial, but I found that probably the average age of the couples who were there, who were all professional people in social service delivery systems, was probably 32 or 33. And the day that we spent on sex roles and what boxes you are automatically put into because you are female, generally that's where you start until you begin to discover, hey man, I got some traps too that come out of this thing where I would develop certain kinds of freedom if I could help free women out of their box. So there is some self-interest there for men. But out of that whole thing, when we got into some real tough stuff, they had a movie called Schmear Guns, and that movie was done out of a theme of sort of a Miss America thing and prettied up women meeting their husbands at the door with candlelight dinners in the background and all those goodies. And vignette-wise, in between all of this, you'd see a woman cleaning up the behind of a baby, and cleaning up dirty toilets, and all of the good stuff that goes with being this glamorous housewife. And it was just a boom, 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 boom. Then we went into small groups. All week long it was male, female, small groups, except that day we went into small groups with men and women separated. And those guys in there were nervous, scared to death, kind of what they were going to face. They wanted to get their wives. One of them said if I could just talk to her for 5 minutes before she went into that small group, you know, to make sure that she didn't get brainwashed. There was a real nervousness there. And these were fairly liberated people, moderately liberated people, a little bit liberated people. Uptight is all get out. But the strange thing that comes is the realities of how do you do the child care thing and the choice of roles in our society today. So you do have it. I think it's more in the younger women. It was easier for my wife and I to go through a lot of transitions when our youngest son was 10 years old. Okay?
Wait a minute, I gotta kick in on this too. It's no easier for the young guy. You're supposed to be working, speaking as a man, is in the, you're in the most tenuous position you can imagine. You're just in with the firm. You've got to work your butt off to make them.
That's what I was talking about, the boxes that are created.
And boy, does it ever shake up the company when the company realizes that your wife and your family is more important than they are, and that you'll call in sick. Not being sick, but just decided that it's more important to stay home than it is go to work. Or I'm going home because I feel it's more important that I be home. Man, that gets you into all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And, well, I guess when I had a session on sex roles, but you're on target as far as I'm concerned.
Well, like Louise, who's head of it, just had a baby, 2 weeks ago, just brought the baby home from the hospital, and they've got it where he's staying home taking care of the baby. And she's going.
He was a part of the Catonsville 9, who just got out of prison. So, about 6 months ago, I guess. Good experience, I guess.
We went up to the Slayton house and we met this kid, and he'd lived in the county for 6 years. And it was unusual to meet him because everybody else has only been here for like 2 years or less or something. And he didn't like it at all.
And he'd also been here as long as for 20 years.
What'd you say?
He's lived in the area for 20 years his whole life, which was brilliant.
And he is getting out. He doesn't like the change.
A new town isn't built for the natives, it's for the people who are moving in. Is that the,
That's more or less what he said.
He said something on race relations about, which got back to the thing of some community centers are black now that had been white, and talked about it and figured that the kids got along all right, whether it's black or white, but he could sense a kind of holding at arm's length. He figured that probably the source of it was the parents, and it's again this thing, just because you're in a new town doesn't mean you're a new person, you're the same person you were when you lived in Baltimore or wherever it was. And we were talking, I said, well, what happens, can you just, after school someday, just drop over to somebody's house in a group? He said, yeah, but the parents come, you kind of feel like you better hide out the door. And
how many black women were at the women's center?
5.
Out of
I can comment on that.
yeah.
I can say, we had gotten to this discussion before about why there wasn't a high level of participation of black women in the regular women's lib thing. And that's mainly because black women don't have time to hassle with the whole question of women's liberation because it's not relevant to them. It doesn't directly affect them because just like speaking for myself, I have things to do with my time. I'm not a middle class white woman sitting at home, 2 kids running around, driving me crazy. And I don't want to leave, I don't want to escape from that situation. So it's just a cop-out for these women to leave the families and say that they're doing something constructive. And, it's just an escape mechanism for white middle-class women. And black women don't find that they need it.
Isn't there also an image problem in terms of the male self-image thing?
You mean with
black situation?
I think Shirley Chisholm would disagree with that.
The black communities that I work in, I was doing a thing prior to nominations in the Democratic Party, and I was making a good case why we should have Shirley Chisholm for president. Coupling that with what's God like, she's black, and trying to deal with that kind of thing. And I find in the black community it's a very unacceptable position for a white person to take in the black community. Very effective in terms of white dealing with white and finding out white self-identity and what it means related to that kind of statement. Some of my good black friends straighten me out on that a little bit because of the male self-image kind of a struggle that's also going on. I don't know. That's a side that I see to it. You probably disagree. Should we do the medical thing?
Yeah.
I want to say a word. I got direct feedback from my wife in the laboratory who talked with Jan after you guys were through and said categorically this was the finest group that she has ever taken on a tour of the healthcare facilities. I'm upset about that. Stroke.
Okay, basically you've heard a lot about the Columbia Medical Plan, and it is a prepaid comprehensive medical program, and it was set up between Johns Hopkins Hospital and University with the Connecticut General Life Insurance Company. And if you can, the easiest way I think to explain how this whole business works, I wish I had a blackboard. To imagine in your mind, this is not one organization called the Columbia Medical Plan. There's no corporation or anything like that. It's 3 organizations that have come to an agreement about this deal.
and you have a triangle. The top is the insurance carrier, who is either Connecticut General or recently Blue Cross. Okay, in one corner you have the Columbia Hospital and Clinics Foundation, who employ, they provide the facilities and they employ all the non-medical personnel, right? Okay, and then in the other corner you have what is called the Johns Hopkins Medical Partnership, and they are basically a partnership of 3 doctors who employ all the doctors that work under this program. And they generally are the 3 groups which run this whole deal. It is also influenced somewhat by the Member Advisory Council, who are people elected from the members in the medical plan, and they act in advisory capacity when they're planning budgets and those kind of deals. At the time now, they do have 1 member from the plan who's on the board of trustees, and they have just made provisions for 2 more to be on the board, and so that they can have a say in what's happening.
The services that the Columbia Medical Plan offers is an outpatient care. The outpatient care gets into preventative care, diagnostic, x-rays, treatment, follow-up, emergency, glasses, those kinds of things. Also prescription drugs and medicine. They have hospital care. You can get a private nurse if your physician says you need one. Surgical and medical care. You have maternity care. Mental illness care, which is pretty decent. They have hospital care for 30 days, and they have an outpatient psychiatric care by the staff at this facility. They even have home visitation. Doctors come to the house. If the particular plan doctor thinks that's what it should be.
Don't hold your breath.
Oh, kids. I don't know where the kids are at. But it's almost like make us well again, Marcus well again. They have an ambulance service. That's also a thing. You also, if you're living in Columbia and coming to Cedar Riverside to see our new town, and I run over you with my car. I probably will. Or 2. You're covered in another place. And if I feed you at my house, and you'll probably get sick, you're covered for sickness out of town too. There are also some other, if high institutional care is required, that covers part of that. And that's to the tune of about, well, for example, if you're in the cities and I make you sick, or your expenses over $2,000 are covered. After that, the plan covers 80% of the expenses. If I think if this is wrong at any time, tell me. Let's you take a look. No, if, for instance, you have to be institutionalized, such as a private nursing home or a state hospital or something like that, mental thing, or whatever, it covers you to the tune of 80% there.
That's with the $200?
What's that?
Is it, you say if you pay your $200, then they pay 80%?
Dr. Torsten will tell you about the costs. When you go to the outpatient clinic, there's a $2 charge to go there. And he'll bring up more of this later. The other things, the hospital care, mental illness, most of these things are free. There's no additional charge once you're doing this. And he'll get into the cost. But anyway, that's the services that you're covered under.
What about abortion referrals?
It's not listed.
It's a new America. They don't have
Well, that may have, I don't know what the state laws are like in Maryland, if that's even legal to have abortion referral advertised.
See, right next door to New York.
Right next door to Washington, D.C.
I assume in the next generation you never get to that stage.
Oh,
Make a mistake.
No mistakes in e-learning.
If they haven't, they'll publicize it. That.
Well, to pursue that part of it, kids can get pills at the clinic without parental consent. And they will.
Oh, is that right?
That's good.
Underage 18?
Preventative care.
My daughter asked me if she decided she wanted to get the pill, was it okay? Or would she have to sneak? She'd prefer not to sneak. But the obvious implication was if I didn't say okay, it's all right.
Given that option.
Pardon?
It's one way to tell if your parents are listening to what you say. Say something like that, no response, you know.
John was supposed to be reporting on the cost, but he asked to be permitted to go to authoritarian OT. He has to be excused. Well, anyway, I was interested in the cost comparison between this comprehensive plan and the comprehensive plan that prevails in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the Duke Health Mutual, which is probably going to become the comprehensive plan base that secures that country. Very, very similar rates. For an individual member, the total monthly cost is $19.40. That is a 1972. I think 73 is up a little bit. For an individual with one family member, either a parent and a son or daughter, or it could be a husband and wife, $38.80 a month. And for an individual with two or more family members, $65.55 a month. So for a family plan, it's around $66. I guess that's up just a little bit too. These are fairly carefully developed, according to Jan. What's her name again? Riker. They have an advisory council, or consumers, now they call it consumers councils, who are representatives in deliberations and developing budgets for the year. And while they are always trying to get the rates down, this is about where it has to be, according to the judgment of the managers of the plan. Now, I don't think I'm going to say any more about the cost, except the $2 for drugs, for example, pharmacy, $2 for a prescription, and you can run into a $100 bill and still $2, or a $50 bill or a $1 bill, and still $2. So, in a sense, there's an insurance against it's a coverage for drug costs.
Everything's $2.
Everything's $2.
If you have a complete physical, I've seen the bills on that. It runs close to $100 to print out on the computer, and that's $2. If you have an eye examination complete, it's $2.
Can you have a complete physical if you want one?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have
Now,
an appointment.
one of the interesting things about the physical in our plan, we've stressed the importance of having preventive physicals every annual, preventive care physical examinations, thorough examinations. We've been pretty happy about it, but here they have taken another look at that and have said that instead of physicals, well, it's a very costly operation, but they also say that they developed an alternative known as a health assessment program, in which the whole family participates in an inventory and a questionnaire and filling out, and they meet with health assistants and so on, and work out their own health assessment. And it's a fairly new.
It's computerized.
And computerized, and they are looking at it, and it's going to be very carefully watched. Their impression now, she says, is that it's working out very well, very satisfactory, as an alternative to this annual physical physical examination. Did somebody have a question?
I just had a point on that. The administration of the clinic is not the best. And a very funny thing happened to me, and I want to relate it to you. About a year after I had signed up with the plan, I called them up and said it's time for my annual physical. And they said, we don't give annual physicals. I said, I'm sorry, I thought when I signed up. So when you signed up, we did, but now we don't. I said, well, what do you do now? I said, well, we give periodic physicals. That's really how it was happening. I said, well, I don't quite understand what periodic physical is. They said, well, we determine the state of your health from your previous physical, and then decide when to give you your next periodic physical. I said, yeah, but I was in excellent health. Well, that's right, so we have determined that you don't really need a periodic physical at this time. I said, but if you carry that, 20 or 50 years from now, I'll be fine. She said, well, yeah, that's ridiculous, we don't do it that way. I said, well, when do you decide? And she said, well, it's not clear at this time. And I said, well, I demand to have a physical. And she said, well, if you really demand it, I'd imagine we'll have to get it. And I said, that's right. I think you will. So but even if that doesn't happen, in order to get this health assessment program, it takes a long time before they will respond. I don't know if you've been through something like this, I know people who have, but people I know and that story.
It's a very long questionnaire. I was just surprised.
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive question.
We didn't have time to really go through the items, but I was impressed with the sheer length.
See, you haven't learned the system yet. I guess that's
I'm
why.
sure of that.
The way the system operates, you have several internists there, and at some period of the year, when you're feeling a little bit down and you're kind of tired, you call up and you make an appointment to see Dr. Taylor and say, I feel kind of run down, just like to go over a few things. Sit down with Dr. Taylor in about 15 minutes, you line up your complete physical and you go get it right away. Because he needs to check back to find out what's making you feel a little bit worn out.
By the way, that $2.
I learned that accidentally.
That $2 is also so you don't go on the hangnail every other day. I mean, it's to prevent people.
Sure. That $2 everything charge, this last year my daughter had discovered a lump on her breast and she went into Johns Hopkins and had surgery on it. Turned out to be a cyst on malignant and so on. But it was like a 2-day visit. The bill was $560. We got billed $2. My father was in. They have an excellent thing for elderly. If you miss some of the elderly stuff here, my father is 72, lives with us. His cost into the Columbia Medical Plan is $12 a month. He couldn't get anything in the commercial market any worse than that. And when he was in for a complete neurological assessment in Johns Hopkins, he was in for over a week. It was around $1,400, $2. So it does have a good side.
I don't know. We didn't get time to ask very many people, but we got very little negative feedback from anybody in the community on the Columbia Medical Plan.
I'll give you negative feedback. If you check in interfaith housing, you would find virtually none of the people belong to the Columbia Medical Plan.
I was going to come to that only 8,000 people in the Columbia area actually belong to the medical plan. And Jan is very much concerned about that. She thinks it's partly a problem of adequate interpretation and encouragement, but it's also some problems of economics.
Right.
And here again, the same kind of story came to us. It's a national problem. It's very difficult for Columbia to solve that problem all by itself. So you got.
There's one way to just beat the system royally. If you can have the bucks, and you know you're sick, and you know it's going to be expensive, come down, move to Columbia right away, and within 2 months, if you sign up, 2 months. 60 days. It's 2 months. You have 60 days, and you can get on this plan without a physical. After that, you got to be assessed by the insurance companies.
Heart transplanting.
So you can come down here, in your last breath, or fifth to the last, so you can at least get to the hospital.
The house will be finished on.
Once that leaks out, that could really do something here. It's a possibility. But see, you gotta have the bucks to either buy or rent or something.
But then there's the problem that people don't get the word. You know, they're supposed to go out and, you know, give them all this information, and, you know, that can be a real problem. And if they have this whole pack of information and they get tired of reading, it's kind of go, chuck, then, you know, they'll miss the whole medical deal, and their 60 days will be up, and then they have to determine their medical eligibility. And if you happen to be a person who, you know, may be kind of a high risk, you may kind of be.
They have an open period every year
I thought people.
thus far, like 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Pardon?
For the whole community?
Yes. 2 weeks during the year where they'll open it on the same basis as if we moved in.
What about mental?
That's a good deal for me.
Yes.
What was that?
Well, it's as he explained, 80%
Is that
hospitalized.
before or after? Like what does that come into?
Well, I don't quite get what do you mean. In the assessment?
If you happen to know you have mental,
Yeah, that's yeah. Yeah. My mother is in a nursing home. She's a vegetable, physically. And we moved, we were here, moved Dad down last April and brought Mom into a nearby nursing home. It cost us approximately $10,000 a year. Had we lived here before and had moved my parents in and she had to go into a nursing home, they would have been under that 80%. Yeah. My mother is. That's all private bucks. The federal government paid 80 days, 3.5 years ago in Medicare, and now it's 0.
I can imagine, people from Scandinavia coming here and say, well, it's certainly better than what I can get if I lived in a non-moved down, non-medical coverage place, but, we wouldn't trade, thank you. But it's probably one of the best systems probably we've got.
When you get over to Scandinavia, however, you will also find some balance on that. Otto Kloth, was pastor at our American congregation in Copenhagen, for example, had access to military medical care and always took it and paid some for it, even though he was a legal resident of Norway. I don't mean Copenhagen, I mean Oslo. And they have that comprehensive medical care. But unless you can establish an absolute emergency, it's 3 to 6 months for an appointment. So you'll find some of that kind of difficulty arising.
The thing that should be kept in mind too is the cost is well worth it. The quality of care here is exceptional. Johns Hopkins is a quality hospital, and that makes a big difference.
And it just seems to me that in terms of Cedar Riverside, if we don't do at least as well as this, we've got a good medical school. It may not be the same quality as Johns Hopkins, but it's pretty common. We shouldn't settle for less than comprehensive.
Does this take care of your dentist bill?
No.
This is an exclusion. So
I have 3 children in orthodontics.
The reason
not for beauty's sake, but for crowded mouths. It doesn't.
They talked to dentist associations and everything. The dentists wouldn't do it. They wouldn't touch it.
It's an expensive thing too, and as far as I know, there isn't any precedent for it in the country yet.
I don't think so. There might be a plan that includes oral surgery, and I think this does to a degree.
Yeah, this covers that.
Yes, and they've tried to.
I'll tell you where it is right now. It's something I picked up about 3 months ago, and I heard about a new prepaid dental plan.
Group Health is talking about
right, and also prepaid legal services is starting to come out too.
Well, if that dental plan could be for you, it's under the biggest.
Okay.
I couldn't hear.
I was just hearing personal bias.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying that if they train not to hurt people, maybe more people would go to them.
I was talking to a dental student and he says he really likes the happy gas. He says that's the latest thing. They're going back to what is it?
Nitrous oxide?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to go on the bias that today with the modern equipment and these very exceedingly high-speed sonic type drills, I guess they call I got a mouthful of metal, and I have to say today, it's not a terribly uncomfortable thing for me. Now, that may be different pain thresholds. Yeah. Well, you know, some surgeons are there because basically they're sadists.
Bill, I know we're probably through.
Yeah.
But I'd like to let's get some clarity about.
I'm just.
Yeah. We need to get some clarity about tomorrow.